Hi, dear language learners. Here's the thing. If you don't know your individual procrastination triggers, you might be going through unnecessary pain. And this is so important because procrastination is actually nothing to do with your character. It's nothing about people being lazy or people not being good learners or not being good at it. We always have that, and that is the social psychology behind it. We always have that kind of association that procrastination means that we're not good at something. No. In today's video, I'm going to share with you 3 steps that you can actually identify your triggers that cause procrastination and move from this painful state of procrastination to an enjoyable process of learning. And especially in language learning, this is actually the reason why so many people get stuck in the intermediate plateau. So this is this state of being an intermediate learner. You already know a vast amount of vocabulary, lots of phrases. You have studied the grammar. You have come so far, but you're just one step away from activating the language, and then you give up because it just feels like a drag, and you feel like can't be bothered anymore. It's so difficult. And whenever you say, oh, this is so difficult, this is where you need to kick in with these 3 steps I'm going to share with you today. But first of all, before we start, let me introduce myself to those of you who join for the first time. I'm Dr. Alex. I'm a social psychologist, and I use the fundamental laws of social psychology to let you develop a far more enjoyable language learning process and to have you actually speak with unshakable confidence. Don't also forget to download your copy of Everyday Nano. This is the 7 steps to fluency. It's available on my website. You can download it. And for those of you who leave me a comment, as always, I give you a discount code. You can get it for free. Because, as you know, those of you who have joined already before, my passion is to share these tips because I really want you to not suffer through that whole process. It should be joyful. Okay, step number 1. The thing about procrastination is actually also knowing it is an unconscious thing, subconscious. It is subconscious, so we all have it. So let's work on self-awareness. This is step 1. Self-awareness is to tap into those moments when you do exactly the opposite. So start watching yourself. Whenever you have this moment of, okay, so now I'm going to, and then you're doing something completely different. In that moment, you need to watch yourself, and even if it helps you to write it down, ask yourself, okay, so why did I started to tidy my whole house instead of actually doing that, revising those sentences I wanted to revise. What are you actually loathing about the task? I give you an example. In my case, it took me a lot of time. That's, by the way, also why I want to share this, because I don't want you to go through the same process. It took me a lot of time to realize that I always procrastinated whenever something seemed big. I suffered from overwhelm because for me, some tasks appeared really big. So I never started them or started them in the last minute because I thought, this is going to take hours. It's so big. I can't possibly be bothered to do that. And so I started to do the opposite. So whenever you have that bodily reaction, it's subconscious. Your body gets away from it because your body wants to avoid the pain of going into that, what you think that is painful. Then actually, it's actually a protection mode of your body, right? So in this moment, you need to then find out, okay, what is it actually that I don't want to do? And write it down. So in my case, overwhelm. Now, let's get to step number 2. Once you have identified what you don't want to do, you need to replace it with something else. And here's already an important insight. It is not, in most of the cases, it's not what you learn, it is how you learn. So you need to replace the method. So in my case, overwhelmed. So I had too big of a tasks lined up. I needed to downgrade, to downscale the size. So what I did was I replaced my technique of saying, revising all the grammar to a small step, revising just the grammar for that sentence. And here's a little psychological trick. You can say yourself, if you suffer also from overwhelm, you can say to yourself, I will only study 5 minutes. And if you only study 5 minutes, you trick your brain into, well, actually, it's not tricking. You will only study for 5 minutes. So you feel, and this works for me brilliantly, I feel, okay, only going to study 5 minutes and then I get started. And that is the magic about it. And once you get started, you might even be doing 10 or 15 minutes. Doesn't matter. You got started. And that is the whole magic about not being procrastinating. Now, the step number two, replacing by something else, is actually once you have identified what you don't want to do, it might be also give you another example, sitting at a desk. If you don't like sitting at a desk and reading out of a book, for example, well, replace it with the active recall method, which is you read the sentence you want to study, and then you do a physical activity. You start moving about, you go for a walk, you go back, and you try to recall it. And so the whole how you go about it, the routine has changed. You're not actually sitting there. So, and this finally leads us to step number three, self-honesty, self-compassion, and also, well, it's self-respect, really. You know, in terms of eliminating pain out of learning and studying and being that kind of disciplined learner that studies every day but with joy, it starts with your mindset of having that self-compassion, of knowing yourself, being self-aware and saying, okay, what is the method that I don't click with it, you know? You need to replace it by a method that brings you joy. And that can be, and this is where creativity kicks in, this can be any joyful activity you combine the language learning with. If you've watched my previous videos about creating a joyful routine, watch them because it's all about that. You need to create those small steps that bring you joy in the way of how you go about them. So, and this is the final note. I really want to make you become more self-aware of how you go about things makes a huge deal, huge difference in how you learn. And really learning traditionally, and this is stereotypical how learning is perceived starting in the school system, it's always perceived as sitting at a desk reading. Reading is great, but it can be one of many different methods. So let me know in the comments which method works for you, how you study your sentence per day, how you go about language learning, and let's lift each other up with great ideas of how we can create that fun routine. Drop me a comment and thanks for watching and see you next time.